speaking about things, what do you? But one of the issues that seems to have dropped off the radar, at least on the new, what people are thinking about is the fact that the wars out there. President Obama ran as an anti-war candidate, but he's increasing troops in Afghanistan. Do you think? And I want to hear what your take on foreign policy is and what should be. And what should the United States policy be in regards
Well,
to foreign policy in general and Afghanistan as well?
yeah, Obama's turned out to be an absolute disaster. I mean, we all knew he was going to be a big spender domestically, that the guy's socialist inclined, he believes in big government, but of course, so do Republicans and conservatives. So, I mean, that's no different. I mean, we all knew that Obama was going to expand government spending domestically, just like George Bush did. Um, well, where we had the hopes for the guy was that he'd be pulling troops, that he'd get out of Iraq, a country that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11, a country that is just an absolute horror story in terms of a war of aggression that the U.S. government has waged against this country, killing an estimated 1 million people. Uh, but he still has the troops there. He's expanding the troops in Afghanistan, the so-called graveyard of empires. Um, Worst of all, he's embraced virtually all of the Bush administration's assault on civil liberties. This is where some of us had some hope that at least he'd be better than Bush on civil liberties. This guy's an absolute disaster. So when you look at this guy, you're really looking at Bush's third term, because there's really no difference of what he's doing and what Bush was doing. And we have opposed this stuff, Chris, since the very beginning, and especially since 9/11. All the infringements on civil liberties, the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, the illegal spying on Americans, the foreign interventionism. I mean, we're libertarians. We believe in a non-interventionist foreign policy. Bring all the troops home from Afghanistan, Korea, Iraq, Europe. World War II is over, by the way. The Cold War is over, by the way. Bring the troops out of Latin America, where they're creating all these problems with this drug war down there. Legalize drugs, get rid of the drug war, and then discharge the soldiers. Put them in the private sector, make them productive citizens instead of sucking off the taxpayers' money, and and establish a republic. I mean, that's what this country was. We were not supposed to be an empire, which of course we are now. We were supposed to be a republic, and that's what libertarians are fighting to do. We're fighting to dismantle the welfare state domestically and dismantle the socialism, and then restore a limited government constitutional republic to our land with respect to foreign policy.
That's in that when the that really fits in with how I think the world should be, and that's what's drawn me more and more towards the philosophy that you're talking about. I visit antiwar.com. I also I think it's the most logical anti-war kind of message out there. And what really drew me to Ron Paul was and getting more involved was he was taking a stand like he did in those early debates in back in 2007. Some of the issues, though, some of the libertarians I've talked to, or people like say they're libertarians, they say that foreign policy doesn't come into doesn't. We should have a strong military out there. And that's a division, I guess, in any kind of philosophy out there too. Would you say to people that call themselves libertarians, but they say that philosophy is wrong, that we should the United States should keep a strong military?
Well, it's sort of like a libertarian that says he favors drug laws. That didn't compute for me.
Oh, with Bob Barr talking about?
Well,
Oh,
just anybody in general, that it's impossible in my mind to be a libertarian and believe in putting somebody in jail for ingesting what someone might be considered a harmful substance. I mean, the core tenet of libertarianism is the non-aggression principle, that you will not aggress against another person. You will not initiate force against another person. That's exactly what is done in foreign policy with this interventionist foreign policy. I mean, when the U.S. government attacked Iraq, a nation that had not attacked the United States, wasn't even threatening to attack the United States, didn't have the capability of attacking the United States, and kills people, that's initiating force. That's killing innocent people. That is, people that have not done anything in terms of initiating force against the American people. Our government was the aggressor in Iraq. That's initiating force. Now, they were trying to make a case about that Afghanistan was different. But in principle, it really isn't. For one thing, they didn't follow the Constitution, which requires a congressional declaration of war. They never got that. That makes that war illegal under our form of government. That applies to Iraq as well. But secondly, they justified that military incursion by going after the Afghan regime, the Taliban regime, claiming that they provided sanctuary for the al-Qaeda terrorists and Osama bin Laden. That's not why they went after the Taliban. They never produced any evidence that the Taliban had conspired with Osama bin Laden to commit the 9/11 attacks. Bush went to the Taliban and said, "We want you to turn bin Laden over to us." When they refused to do that because there was no extradition agreement, the Taliban's response was, look, if you'll provide some evidence that he was involved in this, which is really what would be required in an extradition proceeding, we'll turn him over to an independent tribunal for trial. And Bush at that point said, no, if you don't comply with our orders, we're the empire, we will attack you as well. And that's essentially what ended up happening. Now, we all know that there were 9/11 terrorists here in the United States participating in the planning. We know they were in Germany participating in the planning. There's never a suggestion just because terrorists are participating in a country in their planning that makes that country, that regime responsible. There has to be some kind of overt complicity in that. The U.S. government has never established that with respect to the Taliban. So they go in there and then they invade and they oust the Taliban. They kill countless people in that one. They don't even capture bin Laden. And now they're trapped because they're scared to death that the Taliban's going to get back into power and really do what they accuse them of doing, is providing a sanctuary for terrorism. What we said from the very beginning is, look, this is a criminal justice problem. That was the way that we treated the terrorist attack in '93 on the World Trade Center. Treat it as a police matter. That way you don't go and bomb all these innocent people, the wedding parties. You don't create the threat of terrorist blowback, of retaliation. You don't magnify the problem. And I think now more people are recognizing that this is exactly what should have been done. We should have treated it exactly as we did in '93. But more important, we don't go out there and kill all these innocent people that produces the threat of terrorist retaliation, which then is used as the excuse for taking away our freedom. So I think these libertarians that supported these type of things, inadvertently, maybe unconsciously, were actually supporting a violation of freedom, but then what was being used as a pretense by the federal government as an excuse to take away even more of our freedoms through civil liberties, the enemy combatant doctrine, torture, Guantanamo, suspension of habeas corpus, denial of due process, and many other powers that they now have that they can exercise against us Americans. Those powers are inconsistent with the principles of a free society.
I agree on that. And is it